Good day to everyone. Felix Verdejo Sanchez was a once promising boxer whose career was tarnished by a criminal deed that startled the world. Today we look into the tragic and startling story of Felix Verdejo Sanchez, discussing his life and career. At the Summer Olympics held in London in 2012, the young Puerto Rican boxer was hailed as a diamond in the rough, a future star of the boxing world. This was something that was said about him. They believed that he was destined for greatness and that he would be awarded a multitude of awards and medals in the future. He was seen as a symbol of hope for his nation. Nevertheless, by the year 2021, his name had become notorious, not because of his accomplishments in the sporting world, but rather because of a heinous crime that placed him in the annals of criminal history and cast a shadow over his once promising future. On May 19, 1993, Felix Verdejo Sanchez was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. He lived there from birth. Felix had aspirations of being a baseball player during his formative years, despite the fact that he was raised in a home that was not particularly wealthy. However, a defining incident occurred while he was only 9 years old. A turning point came. The father of Felix recommended that if Felix wanted to fight, he should wear boxing gloves. This suggestion was made following a light-hearted quarrel that took place when a family member came to visit with his kid. As a result of this recommendation, Felix went to a boxing gym in the neighborhood, where he instantly fell in love with the sport. Felix's early success in boxing was a direct result of his enthusiasm and commitment to the sport. It was at the age of 16 that he triumphed at the Pan American Junior Championships, and it was the following year that he won the championship for his country. Because of his talent and his dedication, he was able to secure a slot in the boxing competition at the Summer Olympics in London in 2012. He made it all the way to the quarterfinals, which established him as a rising star in the sport. After making his debut at the Olympic Games, Felix made the decision to pursue a career in the ring as a professional and began an extraordinary journey. A total of 29 battles were fought by him, and he emerged victorious in 27 of them, demonstrating his capabilities and promise. During a battle against Sergio Villanueva in 2014, he produced the knockout of the year, which solidified his image as a formidable boxer. This moment contributed to the establishment of his fame. Felix won his first championship belt for the first time the following year, which was the WBA Latino title. Over the course of the subsequent 2 years, he successfully defended this title 6 more times. Fans and observers alike were of the opinion that Felix was well on his way to become one of the most accomplished boxers of his generation during his career. As we delve deeper into the nuances of Felix Verdejo Sanchez's life, it becomes abundantly evident how his transformation from a renowned athlete to a convicted criminal transpired, leaving behind a path of ruined lives and hopes in its wake. In the month of November 1993, Kayla Rodriguez was born in the city of San Juan, Puerto Rico. In addition to her siblings, she had a sister named Beverly and a half-brother named Jonathan. She was raised in a family that was very close to each other, including her parents, Jose and Kayla Rodriguez, and her siblings. Kayla has a reputation for having a positive and upbeat demeanor even at an early age. As a result of her deep affection for animals, she was able to achieve academic success and pursue her ambition of becoming a veterinarian. The relationship that Kayla shared with her sister, Beverly, was exceptionally close. They supported each other through the ups and downs of life and shared everything that they had in common. During their time at school, Felix Verdejo Sanchez and Kayla Rodriguez became acquainted with one another, which eventually led to the development of a romantic relationship between the two of them. In spite of the fact that they were still young, their relationship swiftly developed into a serious one, characterized by profound affection and a strong connection. However, their relationship was hampered by Felix's growing celebrity and the large number of followers he had. Despite the fact that Felix was involved in a number of personal relationships at the same time that his boxing career was flourishing, his relationship with Kayla remained strong. In 2016, Felix tied the knot with Eliza Maria Santiago Sierra, a young model whom he had been in a relationship with since she was 14 years old. Despite the fact that he was still in a relationship with Kayla, he went ahead and got married, which is a reflection of the intricate and frequently turbulent nature of his personal life. When Felix was looking for stability and a public image of success and family, Eliza, who at the time had a huge social media following and her own beauty business, appeared to be the person he should be looking to. But Felix's ties to Kayla remained strong, and their covert relationship continued even after he married Eliza. This was the case even after he had married Eliza. Within the limitations of his private life, Felix battled to find a balance between his commitments and his interests, despite the fact that his public life depicted him as a dedicated husband and father. Felix's private life was a struggle for him. The fact that he was unable to let go of Kayla, despite the fact that he was married to Eliza, was eventually the cause of the unfortunate events that were going to take place in the future. A disastrous conclusion was ultimately brought about as a consequence of this complex web of relationships, which was marked by love, treachery, and contradicting allegiance. This web of relationships ultimately brought about a tragic outcome. The young model Eliza Maria Santiago Sierra, who had been an integral part of Felix Verdejo Sanchez's life ever since she was only 14 years old, became an essential component of his life when he tied the knot with her in the year 2016. As soon as they got married, Felix seemed to declare the beginning of a new chapter in his life. He had previously publicly embraced his role as a loyal husband and, eventually, a parent. Following the birth of their daughter Miranda in 2019, the couple experienced the joy of being parents for the very first time. On multiple times, Felix gave the image of being a loyal and affectionate family man by sharing pictures of himself in a state of household happiness on social media. At the same time, he gave the idea of being stable and committed. Nevertheless, Felix's private life, which was full of clandestine encounters, stood in stark contrast to the public persona that he projected to the world during his whole life. Among these, his connection with Kayla Rodriguez, who had been his friend from childhood and his lover for a very significant amount of time, was one of the most significant and long-lasting of them all. In spite of the fact that he was married to Eliza, Felix continued to pay Kayla visits. His inability to break free of the ties that bound them together prevented him from doing so. The discovery by Eliza of Felix's extramarital activities, in particular his continuous affair with Kayla, was the impetus that led to the beginning of the failure of this double lives. After being faced with his betrayal, Eliza threatened to divorce him and deny him access to their daughter, so adding another layer of complexity to Felix's already chaotic personal life. Felix's daughter was also denied contact to her father. In April of 2021, Kayla Rodriguez was informed that she was expecting a kid. She was thrilled to get this news. Felix was informed immediately, and she did so with the hope that he would concur with her decision to keep the kid after all. The reaction that Felix had, on the other hand, was one of fury and panic to the situation. In the event that the potential of producing an unwed kid ever arose, it posed a risk not just to his reputation but also to the fragile stability of his marriage. Kayla was adamant in her refusal to have an abortion, even if Felix insisted that she go with the procedure. She was adamant in her intention to raise the child on her own, even if it meant doing so by herself. Felix arranged to meet with Kayla on April 29, 2021, with the intention of having a chat about the pregnancy. The meeting was supposed to take place just the two of them. Kayla went to the meeting in spite of the concerns and warnings that her sister Beverly had voiced about the situation. She was holding out hope that Felix would finally accept the situation that they were in. One of the gatherings that took place was in a location that was quite far away. Felix, who was accompanied by his accomplice, Luis Antonio Cadiz, had no intention of resolving the conflict in a civilized manner. He was determined to get his way. Felix approached Kayla once more about terminating the pregnancy when she arrived at the area where the murder took place. After she refused to comply, the situation quickly got more dangerous than it had been before. During the moment that Kayla was unconscious, Felix delivered a strike that knocked her out. In addition to being bound with wire and having a concrete block attached to her body, she was also given the deadly dose of poisons that were administered to her. Louis was one of the people that helped him accomplish all of this. Following their arrival at the San Jose Lagoon, the two men threw Kayla into the water. This occurred after they had driven to the lagoon and dropped her off there. They were under the notion that they had successfully covered up their heinous behavior, so they shot at her body and then fled the location. This caused them to kill her. In order to guarantee that she would not live, this action was taken. On the other hand, their strategy began to lose its effectiveness practically immediately after they started. The following day, Kayla did not show up for work, and her family and co-workers got concerned about her absence. They were anxious about her not being there. Beverly, her sister, reported that she was missing to the authorities and shared her ideas with them regarding Felix's potential involvement in the investigation. When Felix's alibi was investigated, it was found to be false, and the investigation quickly shifted its focus on Felix as the primary suspect. Through the utilization of surveillance film and forensic evidence, it was determined that both he and Luis were involved in the criminal activity. Kayla's body was discovered on May 1, 2021, confirming the worst concerns that her family and friends had been suffering. Kayla had been missing since May 1st. While the neighborhood was expressing their outrage, Felix was swiftly hauled into arrest. Felix persisted in his denial of involvement in the crime, despite the abundance of evidence that pointed to his complicity. Nevertheless, Luis, who was Felix's accomplice, cooperated with the investigators and offered a comprehensive account of the criminal activity. A once promising athlete who allowed his personal difficulties to damage not just his career, but also the lives of those around him, was brought to light by the case, which sent shockwaves through the world of boxing and beyond. An athlete who had once shown promise was brought to light by the case. During the course of the investigation, the tragic death of the athlete was brought to light. The first sign that something was awry was when Kayla Rodriguez did not show up for work at the Veterinary Medicine and Aesthetics Center on April 30th, 2021. This was the first indicator that something was wrong. Her co-workers were concerned about her absence for no obvious reason, despite the fact that she was recognized for her responsibility and attention to detail because of her reputation. After numerous unsuccessful attempts to reach Beverly, Kayla's sister, via telephone, a phone call was made to her. Beverly was the recipient of the call. The choice to determine whether or not her sister was okay was made by Beverly, who was already concerned about the fact that her sister had an interaction with Felix the previous evening. It was a sign that something was seriously wrong when she saw Kayla's house empty and that her pets had not been fed. This was a signal that something was drastically wrong. It was immediately reported to the authorities by the family that Kayla was gone, bringing attention to the fact that she had a bad relationship with Felix Verdejo Sanchez. When Kayla's automobile was discovered abandoned on the east side of San Juan, it had her personal items but showed no indications of struggle. This gave the inquiry a boost of energy. This revelation, in conjunction with the family's concerns, led the authorities to focus their attention on Felix being the suspect. On May 1st, 2021, a bystander noticed what seemed to be a body in the San Jose Lagoon. This was the moment that the investigative breakthrough occurred. Remains of a young woman were found by the police, and they were later determined to be those of Kayla Rodriguez based on the characteristic tattoos she possessed. As a result of the terrible finding, there was a public uproar, and the media received extensive attention, asking that justice be served for Kayla. Felix Verdejo was brought in for interrogation, but at first he denied any involvement in the murder. He claimed that he was at home with his family on the night of the crime. It didn't take long for his alibi to fall apart, especially after his wife Eliza was unable to provide any evidence to support his account. Following the discovery of traffic surveillance film, the investigators discovered that Felix's pickup truck and Kayla's automobile were heading together in the direction of the lagoon. Traces of Kayla's hair were discovered during the forensic examination of Felix's vehicle, which further implicated him in the crime. Luis Antonio Cadiz, Felix's accomplice, made the decision to collaborate with the authorities, which led to the case becoming more public awareness. Luis provided a lengthy confession, explaining the entire scheme to murder Kayla and the subsequent attempts to cover it up. He did this out of fear of the repercussions of a full trial and the weight of evidence against him. There was no room for dispute regarding Felix's involvement, especially when this confession was combined with the physical evidence. In addition to being charged with carjacking, kidnapping, premeditated murder, and the murder of an unborn child, Felix Verdejo Sanchez and Luis Antonio Cadiz were also accused of committing many other serious offenses. The proceedings in the courtroom received a great deal of publicity, which attracted a substantial amount of attention both domestically and abroad. During the course of the trial, the prosecution made a strong argument, which was further strengthened by the evidence of Luis Cadiz. The evidence consisted of surveillance footage, forensic discoveries, and in-depth accounts of the events that transpired prior to Kayla's passing. Many members of the public and members of the media were present in the courtroom, all of whom were eager to witness justice being carried out. There was a distinct sense of loss and rage among Kayla's family and friends, who attended each and every session. Throughout the entirety of the trial, Felix steadfastly maintained his innocence and refused to acknowledge any involvement in the criminal act, despite the overwhelming evidence. On the other hand, his defense attempted to throw doubt on the trustworthiness of Luis's testimony as well as the forensic evidence, but the strategy was unsuccessful in swaying the jury. During the summer of 2023, the experiment reached its most significant point. Felix Verdejo and Luis Antonio Cadiz were found guilty on all charges by the jury after several weeks of testimony and deliberation between the members of the jury. The verdict was received by Kayla's family, who had undergone a long and difficult journey to have justice done, with a mixture of relief and sorrow at the loss of their loved one. Equally charged was the response from the general population, with many people expressing their contentment with the fact that the judicial system had prevailed. Kayla's family has continuously lobbied for life imprisonment without the chance of parole, as they believe that a life sentence would be a more appropriate punishment than the death penalty. This is despite the fact that the death penalty was an option. The conclusion of the trial not only signals the end of a tragic chapter, but it also serves as a sharp reminder of the far-reaching implications that have resulted from Felix Verdejo's fall from grace. It is anticipated that both Felix Verdejo Sanchez and Luis Antonio Cadiz will be sentenced to life in jail without the possibility of parole. The case presented by the prosecution was extremely compelling, and the jury's verdict of guilty was commensurate with the seriousness of the offenses they committed. Although the threat of the death penalty hovered over the trial, the constant requests from Kayla Rodriguez's family for a life sentence have molded the conclusion that is anticipated to occur. The public has been both enthralled and horrified by this story, and this final court procedure will provide some degree of finality to the controversy. There has been a significant impact that this horrific occurrence has had on the families that were affected. The family of Kayla Rodriguez has been through unfathomable suffering as a result of the horrific manner in which they lost a cherished daughter and sister. As a result of their public quest for justice, they have garnered considerable support and sympathy, and they have become strong activists against violence based on gender characteristics. Mrs. Eliza Santiago, who is married to Felix, has been through her own struggles. Due to the public dissolution of her marriage, she has been compelled to shield her little daughter from the consequences of the situation. Eliza was able to revive her life by remarrying and concentrating on her business. despite the fact that she was subjected to threats and scrutiny from the public. The general public's perception of Felix Verdejo has undergone a significant transformation. Once regarded as a talented athlete and national hero, he is now considered as a fallen star whose activities lead to a horrendous crime. He was once acclaimed as a national hero. More widespread discussions about domestic abuse, the pressures of fame, and the darker side of celebrity society have been raised as a result of his conviction. It is expected that Felix Verdejo and Luis Antonio Cadiz will remain incarcerated for the remainder of their individual lives. The result that the court system reached in this particular case highlights the serious consequences that their acts brought about. Verdejo's boxing career, which had the potential to become legendary, has come to a tragic end as a result of this. As a somber reminder, Cadiz is reminded of the fact that involvement in criminal acts can result in a lifetime of sorrow and punishment for the one involved. The story of Felix Verdejo Sanchez is a riveting account of the ascent and collapse of a teenage athlete named Felix Verdejo Sanchez. After a promising boxing career that saw him reach amazing heights, Verdejo fell into disgrace and involvement in criminal activity. Verdejo was born with an enormous amount of skill. Infidelity and control were two of the problems that plagued his relationship with Kayla Rodriguez, which resulted in a heinous act that stunned the entire globe. The legal proceedings that were brought against Verdejo and Cadiz were a demonstration of the determination to seek justice. A convincing body of evidence and testimony was presented in court, which brought to light the fact that their acts were extremely calculated. The reactions of the public and the media to the trial highlighted the universal condemnation of their actions and the profound pity for Kayla's family. Domestic abuse, the obligations of public persons, and the impact of toxic relationships are some of the topics that have been brought up in the context of this case, which has sparked critical conversations about these other topics. This serves as a depressing reminder of the fact that even the most promising careers can be overshadowed by personal shortcomings and illegal conduct. Thank you for watching. I recommend our other crime videos.